Hello, Seeker. Welcome to Revival of Symbolism, a channel devoted to the language of esoteric symbolism, helping you discover yourself and expand your consciousness into new realms of thought. I'm Harry B. Joseph, also known as Revival of Wisdom, and in this video, we're going to be discussing the symbol of the double-headed eagle, also known as the emblem to represent the 33rd degree Freemason. So let's jump straight into this. We have a piece of Masonic artwork here, which is what we call a complex symbol. A complex symbol is not just one symbol, but many different symbols in one piece of artwork coming together, forming a greater meaning. So we have many different symbols to break down here. And we're going to start off with a little bit of context so we can understand this symbol. This symbol represents the 33rd degree Freemason. Once you reach the 33rd degree of the York Scottish Rite Mason system. So once you reach this level, this symbolism corresponds to that individual. So therefore, this piece of artwork is representing the consciousness, the mindset, the ways of thinking, the ways of viewing the world of the 33rd degree Mason. It represents the consciousness of the 33rd degree Mason. And this is what esoteric symbolism is about. Esoteric symbolism is symbols and emblems representing states of consciousness and teachings within the forces of consciousness. So let's jump straight into this. The first thing that I see when I look at this piece of symbolism is the double-headed eagle, okay? The double-headed eagle. What is this eagle doing? So the thing with symbolism is that symbolism trains the mind to think in a subconscious way. Now, what do I mean? To the person who thinks in linear thought, straight line thought, A to B thought, they see an eagle. They see a piece of artwork. They just see a piece of artwork with no meaning. But to the person who is trained in the occult, these symbols are representing thought vibrations. One example would be in occult symbolism, what we're meant to do. These symbols represent thought forms in the mental plane, within the mind of the individual. Instead of me just giving you the answers, in the occult, they give you symbols. And what you're meant to do is look at these symbols, stare at these symbols, and see what kind of thought arises in your mind, and follow the chain of thought. This is how you unlock deeper levels of symbolism. This is what we call the chain of thought. Now, what do I mean by the chain of thought? If I look at the eagle, I see an eagle on a basic level thought. But then that thought leads to another connection, because this is how thought works. Whatever the character of the thought we think is, or whatever the vibration of that thought, for example, the character of the thought right now would be an eagle, then that leads to another thought. For example, flying. Then flying is connected like a chain to another thought, higher perspective. So we follow the chain of thoughts until we unlock the deeper levels of the meaning of the symbol. And this is what the occult seeks to do. Symbols make and force the individual to go inward. You look at the symbol, it's not a direct meaning, but you have to go inward and start to think and follow the chain of thought that this symbol is connected to until you find its deeper meaning that relates to the individual, to you, to a teaching or a force of consciousness or a state of consciousness, okay? It's very difficult to explain in words because symbols transcend the barrier of words, okay? So what we're looking at here is a eagle. And what does the eagle do? Well, the eagle has the ability to fly above the earth. It looks down upon the earth. In allegory and metaphor, this represents a higher perspective of reality, a higher perspective of the world, of the self. So this is representing the consciousness of the 33rd degree Mason. They have a higher perspective of themselves. Why? Because they studied the mysteries. They studied the Kabbalah. They understand consciousness. They understand the human psyche. They understand the origins of consciousness, the forces of consciousness. They understand how the material world is created through the forces of consciousness. So the eagle represents higher perspective because it can fly above the earth. And here you have the earth, this circle here, this sphere. So it's flying above, symbolizing a higher perspective of reality, a higher perspective of the physical world, the physical body, and the self. Because ultimately, this is what it's about. Freemasonry is about, of course, self-mastery, building a better self. That's what the craft is. But it's ultimately trying to figure out the mysteries of consciousness itself and the origins of reality. We gain this insight through Kabbalah, the study of the Kabbalah tree. So let's not get off track here. So the eagle ultimately represents a higher perspective of reality because it can fly. On a deeper level, it also represents the astral body because the astral body can fly above the material plane. It has no connection, no limitation to the physical plane. It does have a connection to the physical plane because all of the dimensions, the mental, the astral, the etheric, the physical, are all interwoven to each other. However, it also represents the activation of the light body, hence why we see this light rays around it. But that's a bit too deep for now. Let's go a little bit deeper into about the basics of this symbol. If you look at this eagle here, this eagle's looking backwards, and this eagle's looking forward. So this is forward and backwards. This is symbolizing time. So we have an eagle looking into the past and an eagle looking into the future. This is called the mastery of time. This is how you master time. You have a crown in the middle of these two heads. A crown is something worn by royalty, and royalty has a lot of power. So this is symbolizing personal power and mastery. How do you gain your personal power and mastery over time, over the past and future? Well, it's very simple. In order to master time and master your future and master your past, you have to look at the forces in your past that have led you to this very moment. Here we have a triangle which represents the number 3. Remember, in this middle, which is the present. So you have to look into the past to see what thought, emotion, action, the number 3, the 3 expressions of consciousness. Consciousness expresses itself through thinking, feeling, and acting. That's how consciousness manifests itself in 3 different ways. You have to look into your past to see what thought, emotion, and action has led you to this very point in your life in the present moment. And what you can do now, which is your power, the present moment is your power, you can ultimately change your thought, emotions, and actions now to create a better future. You observe the past to see what thought, emotions, and actions created your present moment. You notice the mistakes and you change the now through thought, emotion, and action to generate a better future. This is how you master time. Now, keep in mind, this is always in the mind of a 33rd degree Mason. Someone who is highly, mastered, they keep this in mind. Just like they keep in mind what thoughts they are paying attention to. 33rd degree Mason has a lot of self-mastery power, and they hold conscious thought. Most people think unconsciously and without power. A 33rd degree Mason is trained, their mind is trained. Therefore, their mind thinks powerfully. They do not think randomly because they understand thoughts are the seeds to physical creation. All physical creation is a crystallization of thought. So ultimately, this double-headed eagle representing left and right, and the crown in the middle represents mastery over time. That's how you master time. Again, here we have the eagle standing on top of a sword. The sword is, of course, on a basic level, the sword represents power. Because if I hold a sword to you, I hold the power over you, because you will more likely fear. But if we go even deeper, the sword cuts through the air. When you swing it, it moves through the air. Therefore, it's a symbol of the air. Because you can't really make a symbol of the air, because air is invisible. So the sword is a symbol of the air. And the air is one of the 4 physical elements in alchemy. We have water, symbolizing emotion. We have fire, representing the spirit. We have earth, symbolizing the physical body. Then we have air, symbolizing the mental body. The mental body. So the mental body is symbolized by this sword. A sword has to be continually sharpened. If you don't sharpen the sword over a long period of time after using it, it will become dull and it won't be very effective. This is an allegory symbolizing the human mind, because the human mind is like a sword. If you do not sharpen your mind, you will lose control of your mind. When you stop doing the meditations, when you stop being conscious, when you stop doing the affirmations, the mind falls back into old, unconscious thinking patterns, and we start to lose control of it. The mind is seen as a sword within the occult, because this is pretty much your tool. Your mind is your tool. This, just like the sword is a tool. Your mind is a tool to create reality. So we need to make sure this tool is always sharpened, that we stay on top of the mind, hence why the eagle is on top of the sword, symbolizing control over the sword, mastery over thought. This also goes into thought forms. In the occult, there's something called thought forms. Thought forms are basically taught to the individual and understood by the individual, who understands that the mind is not just in the brain. The mind is a part of a mental field. All around you, there is not just a field of energy. There's also a field of mind surrounding you. It's a mental universe. And this field of mind is what we call the mental plane. The field of mind is where all of the possible thoughts in the universe infinitely express itself. So each area has different thought forms. Each postcode, each place you go has different thought forms. This is why if you walk into a cathedral, for example, an ancient, amazing structure, your mind instantly becomes, you're amazed. You feel different when you walk into these areas, because all around you is a mental field. And there's something called thought forms. Thought forms are basically what religion call spirit guides or angels, helpers. This is what thought forms are. Thought forms are basically, if you dwell on the thought that you are going to lose your girlfriend, for example. Let's use a negative example here, because a lot of people can relate to this. Or your boyfriend. Let's keep it simple. Everyone can relate to this at some point in their life, hopefully. Or, if not, it's okay. No worries. It's just an example that most people can relate to. If you constantly dwell on the thought that you are going to lose your partner, what we have to understand is that the mental plane, what we have to understand is that the forces within consciousness, within what we call the universe, is always trying to give you what you want to create. That's your right. The universe, or mind, or consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is always trying to unfold what you want to create. It doesn't know the difference between something you don't want to create or do want to create. Whatever you think about is ultimately what this power of consciousness or the universe will try and manifest. This is why we have to gain mastery over our thought, because thought are basically the seeds that we impress into the dimensions. So we have a mental dimension, we have a higher, middle, lower subplanes of the mental dimension or the mental plane. Then that's just thought. The mental plane is just thought. Below the mental plane, thought takes the body of imagination, which is what we call the astral plane. And the astral plane also has higher, middle, and lower subplanes. Then we have the etheric plane. The etheric plane is basically an energetic copy of the physical plane. So you have an etheric brain, you have an etheric body. It's just basically an energetic, exact copy of everything that is physical. So if we think something within our mental body and we dwell on that thought, the more attention you give, the more you feel that anxiety about losing your partner, you're literally forcing energy and direction and attention into this thought idea, which manifests itself within your own aura. Your aura is basically, it's not just your electromagnetic field. Your aura has many different levels. It has a physical level, it has an etheric level, an astral level, and a mental level, like layer. So it has a layer for each one of these bodies. If you dwell on this thought and you keep giving attention, power, you start to imagine this because you're worrying about it. You literally create a elemental or energetic substance that clouds your aura. And this is what people have been called demons, people call spirit guides, whatever you want to call it. This is what it is. It's a thought form. But this is not something that's come after you. This is something that the individual has created. And wherever they go, this cloud of thought forms that they've manifested literally clouds their aura. You can see it within the astral plane and the mental plane. You can see how it's affecting them. Wherever you go, you start to randomly think about it. You keep thinking about it. You know, it's infecting you. It's like a demon. It's tormenting you. But it's simply just a force, an astral force, and a mental cloud that they've manifested within their aura. Thought forms. The 33rd degree Mason has very powerful thought forms. And this is, you know, if you're a Mason yourself, and you're not aware of this, this is why it's great to be around a 33rd degree Mason within your lodge, because they have very powerful thought forms, and you being in the present of them, you're also taking on his thought forms, and they can assist you. We're all affecting each other through thought transference through the mental field or the mental plane. Okay. Now I'm not going to go too deep into that because, you know, people can use that knowledge for really bad. But ultimately, it represents thought forms also, symbolized by these clouds. Clouds are a symbol of thought forms, because they manifest themselves as basically like a cloud form energy within the aura of an individual. So this represents the mastery over the intellectual side of consciousness, of thought, sharpening the mind, gaining mastery. Then we have 33 in a triangle. A triangle in alchemy symbolizes, well, the upwards triangle, the upright facing triangle symbolizes the element of fire. The downright facing triangle represents the element of water. So an upright triangle represents fire. Fire is very transformative. If you place, I don't know, a pencil into fire, the fire will burn it down into its raw material. And this is ultimately what this triangle represents. It represents the consciousness of the 33rd degree Mason, who has basically transformed themselves from ego consciousness, only dwelling within the limits of their ego, their old belief systems of thinking they were the body, only reacting to five sense thinking, linear thinking, low base consciousness, not knowing right from wrong. It's basically transforming themselves. They have burnt themselves down to their raw soul form, and they understand that they are a soul, and they've experienced this, by casting off all the attachments to consciousness. This is why there is the number 33 within this triangle, because 33 is the age that Jesus dies. It's also the number of the Kabbalah tree, because the Kabbalah tree has 10 Sephiroths, 22 pathways, and one hidden sphere called Dot, which all adds up to 33. And the Kabbalistic tree of life, just to give you a bit of context, basically is a blueprint of how God manifested the world, and you are an expression of God. So it's also representing how your soul fell into matter, how consciousness creates matter. And it's also a diagram of how reality is not fixed, but it's ever unfolding creation through these forces of consciousness. So the Kabbalah teaches a way back to source consciousness if you go from the bottom of the tree to the top. And in order to go to source consciousness, you have to die symbolically. It's the death of the self, the death of the ego, the death of the old self, the old belief systems that you had. That has to die. The old person has to die to give room to be spiritually reborn, so you can actually figure out who you actually are. Your ego has to die. Now, that's not saying ego death, but you have to basically give away all of your old belief systems to then be spiritually reborn. That's why Jesus dies at 33 and is resurrected. Ice melts from ice into water at 33rd degree. So it's symbolic of transforming. And again, the upright triangle is the fire element, symbolizing burning things to its base raw material. 33, which is again death and resurrection. So it's all about burning the old self and being spiritually reborn again. This is the teachings of Hermeticism, Christianity. It's in everything. You'll see this symbolism or this story of death and resurrection absolutely everywhere in the ancient myths, because it's all talking about the same thing. You have to symbolically die. You have to kill off the old self to be spiritually reborn, to be initiated into a mystery school. So the 33rd degree Masons basically saying, well, they have resurrected. They have resurrected the connection to their soul, because as we grow older in this life, we lose connection with our true authentic self as the ego develops as we get older. And if we don't stop developing the ego, we never actually connect with who we truly are, which is a divine, immortal, formless being who has the infinite power of creation. This is what you actually are. Okay, so it's also symbolizing the union of opposites, hence why we have a double-headed eagle here. It has opposites. Obviously, this is massive within the occult. You see this everywhere, union of opposites. Okay, so union of opposites goes from, basic teachings to the most advanced teachings that most minds are not ready for. Union of opposites is on a basic level, is union of the mind and the heart, going from mind consciousness, which is basically ego, the lowest self. That's not to say the mind isn't powerful, but that is the house of the lower self. The ego. It's the house of the ego. So we have to learn how to use the mind for what its proper use. The mind's proper use is for the soul to create. However, we're not taught this in school, so we've basically developed a false personality within our minds, and our minds have become a vessel for a false identity. So what we need to do is integrate the heart, which is the soul self, the true self, with the true powers of the mind. And the mind is basically a powerhouse of creation, infinite possibility. And that's the mind's true usage is for creation, not a false identity. So it's about integrating the mind and heart. It's also symbolizing a balanced mind, and we do this by aligning the left and right hemispheres of the brain, which help you perceive reality for what it truly is. Because the two double-headed eagles, they're joined together, so it's union of opposites. So it's about reintegrating the female and male aspects of self, such as the left and right hemispheres of the brain, the mind and the heart, all working as one system. When we align the left and right brain, we see reality for what it truly is. Now, what do I mean? Most 90% of people, I'm not putting anyone down, if you relate with this, it's fine. We're all here to work on ourselves. I'm not putting anyone down. People with a left hemisphere dominated view on reality see things as a very logical. They see reality logically, basically. Now, what do I mean? They see things as this is science, that's mathematics, that's religion, that's metaphysics. They're all separate and divided because that's what the left hemisphere does. The left hemisphere basically dissects everything down. The way the brain works is truly magical. The right hemisphere of the brain allows us to basically see a bigger perception on reality. It sees the bigger picture. The bigger picture, for example, the woods. It sees the woods as a whole unified woods. But then the left hemisphere of the brain takes that view and perception of the woods, dissects it down and analyzes it into individual branches, trees, leaves, animals, insects. But in reality, it's all one, because all is manifested from the one God, the one source, the unmanifested consciousness, the unmanifested force. So it's union of this. We have to view the world as in, yes, everything is one, but I'm also living in my personal consciousness. Yes, there is a collective consciousness. We're all one consciousness, but I also have my personal consciousness. I need to think about both, making sure that my thought, emotion, and action is contributing towards the evolution of myself and the evolution of humanity. A person who is only left hemisphered only thinks about themselves mainly, 90% of the time. They only, they're trapped in ego, and the individual can't see pattern recognition, really. Pattern recognition is more the right hemisphere because it sees the whole. So it's about aligning the brain hemisphere so we can actually see reality for what it is, so we can, without distortion or illusion, and be neutral. Okay, we have light rays. Light rays are very symbolic within the occult, especially Freemasonry. Light rays are symbolic of force and form. These are the two dualities within the occult: force and form. The internal world is force, external world is form. Everything outside of you is a formation of force. No force ever takes place on the physical plane. All force takes place within mental, astral, or etheric. The physical world is formation. Therefore, what is the force that drives you? What is the desire that's a force? Emotion, force, thought, force. What are the forces driving you to take action in the physical world? And we need to gain mastery over these forces. Light is also a symbolic of knowledge, because knowledge is considered light. This is why Freemasons say going from darkness to light. Darkness is ignorance. People who are only aware of their five senses, they don't want to know anything else. Their minds are completely shut off. I have my belief system. That's it. I'm happy. I don't care. That's their ego limiting themselves and building their own prison. Light, on the other hand, is about going from a state of unconsciousness, not being aware, into a state of light. Light makes things reveal itself. If I shine light on you when it's dark, I reveal truth. You're there, you're manifested. If you're in a dark room and I shine a torch on you, you're revealed. The veil is lifted. The darkness is gone. So this is symbolic of light revealing higher truths to yourself as you walk the path of self-realization and gnosis. So light is symbolic of this also. They have high amounts of intelligence, a 33rd degree Mason. They have a lot of light. They have a lot of knowledge. They've researched a lot of things. They're intelligent in many different areas of life, within speech, within grammar, the way they portray thought, their mastery, their level of mastery, their understanding of themselves is very advanced. They also know a lot about physiology, about the brain, about the body, life, consciousness, astrology. They know a lot. They have a lot of light. 33rd degree Mason. Me, myself, I'm not a part of Freemasonry, and if I ever do become a part of Freemasonry or any order, I will openly share it to all of you. This information has come from following the chains of thought through self-study and self-realization, and studying Freemasonry from an external view. You can gain a lot of insight just by studying symbolism itself. Masonry is about being a builder. That's what the word mason is. Mason is about building. The word mason means builder, and it's about building the self. We're all building either our prison of our soul, or we're building our freedom of our soul. Every single one of you. Every time you reject something that you were, if you reject where, if you did something wrong and you reject your, you being wrong, someone tells you were wrong, but you reject that, or they try to give you a piece of information and you reject it, you're building your mind's prison, stone by stone. But the person who has an open mind to all things is freeing their mind, freeing their soul. So we're all builders of our soul, and we're all builders of reality also. And we're all building Earth. This is the building project is Earth. We're all contributing towards it through our thoughts, emotions, and actions. These are our God-gifted powers: thought, emotion, action. These are our rights to operate in the world. These are your buttons to control the character in the game. So I hope this information has given you a lot of insight about this symbol. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you wish to go even deeper, because the occult goes deeper than you could ever possibly imagine, I have a whole private community filled with hundreds of hours of esoteric teachings, self-mastery, things. We have a whole library. If you wish to go deeper, the invite is there and the door is open. I'll leave a link in the description. Have an amazing day, everyone.